morning. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Welcome to the city of Somerville.
Happy New Year's, everybody. Every New Year's Day, we come together to reflect on all the history that Prospect Hill has seen, that Somerville has seen. And this year, I'm sad that we can't be together physically. But you know, in a lot of ways, I find it particularly meaningful because we are in the middle of history. I don't need to tell any of you that this has been a year that they will write about in the history books, and we are all going through it together. So I want to thank each and every one of you who has come together in such an amazing way this year to help Somerville get through this. And as we say goodbye to 2020 and welcome 21, let us continue to work together and hope for a much brighter year. Happy New Year's.
Good morning. I am Dr. Samuel Langdon, President of Harvard College. We are gathered here today under the hand of the Lord. The arm of cruel oppression is sweeping across New England, and especially this colony. And yet, this day is dedicated to liberty. Liberty granted to us by the Lord God Almighty. Thanks be to God that He has given us natural rights. With these natural rights, we may form ourselves into a civil society and so provide for our common safety and advantage. The King George has recently told us that our love of liberty precludes our love for him. The King and his ministers will have no talk of liberty. We must keep our eyes fixed on the supreme government of the eternal King, who directs all events. This is the first flying of our flag, a new flag for America, an America soon to be bathed in liberty and free from tyranny. May the Lord hear us on this day of display. May He defend us, send us help from His sanctuary, and give us strength as we set up our banner. For the Lord your God is He that goeth with you, fights with you against your enemy, and saves you. Amen.
Hello, Somerville. It's Mayor Joe. Happy New Year. I'm so happy we're still able to hold this event, even if it's virtual. The raising of the Grand Union flag certainly has important historical significance, but it has a special significance this year. Leading up to January 1st, 1776, we weren't even a nation. We hadn't even declared independence, but we were a series of colonies, a collection of colonies that were in conflict, conflicted by whether we should maintain official allegiance with England or to embark and carve a path of democracy and independence to be a free nation. Here on Prospect Hill, this place was occupied by the Continental Army because it was a strategic vantage point of Boston, which was occupied by the British Army. The men of the Continental Army had suffered through grueling winters and hot summers and were longing to be at home with their families and loved ones and wondered when. They felt the stress and the uncertainty and trauma of those times. Sounds familiar? When the Grand Union flag was raised on January 1st, 1776, it energized every colony to be united. And it led and carved a path to the Declaration of Independence several months later. Prospect Hill is more than just a place in Somerville. The events here were a seminal moment in the birth of our nation. But there's so much about that historical moment that we can learn from. So much about that moment that is still relevant today. Like then, today we are a nation in conflict. Like then, we face uncertainty about the future. We continue to battle a pandemic that is wreaking havoc on the people of this nation. We continue to fight off assaults against our democracy and democratic institutions. So here's what we can do. We can turn and look upon and be inspired by the selfless sacrifice of the men on Prospect Hill and the men and women who sacrificed themselves to help form this country. We can look to the raising of the Grand Union flag and allow it to continue to be a beacon of hope and to light our way to a path to live up to our American ideals, to be a diverse, tolerant, compassionate, and civil society, willing to sacrifice ourselves for our fellow residents. Let's do this. I hope you all have a happy and healthy new year, and I pray for a future for all of us. God bless.
Greetings from atop Prospect Hill. My name is Brandon Wilson, and I'm here as the Executive Director of the city's Historic Preservation Commission, as well as the coordinator of this annual historic event. Today is January 1st, and a day that people throughout the world celebrate. It's the beginning of a new year, ushering in hopes for many different wishes, for a more fulfilling life, for greater care for the welfare of our human beings, or perhaps for a more evident commitment to keeping our planet healthy. These are all important and noble sentiments, but here in Somerville, we also recognize this day for an auspicious event that occurred right here on Prospect Hill. I stand here today with only a few hardy souls to mark the 245th anniversary of the raising of the flag of the United Colonies.
Huzzah!
Yay!
At the time, we were a part of Charlestown and known as the place beyond the neck, where only a few thousand people resided and were most likely outnumbered by the grazing livestock and the natural wildlife. The landscape around us here is vastly different from what we currently see here. Many less buildings, more trees, and large expanses of open space abounding. One condition, however, remains largely intact, and that is the outstanding view of this prominent hill of the surrounding area, stretching all the way to the Boston Harbor and the communities along the way. Other similarities are also present. The cold and wintry weather still prevalent in New England, a pandemic raging out of control, yet this time from another source, last time it was smallpox, and very challenging times for many citizens who lacked adequate housing or food or a livable source of revenue. Like today, it was a time for resilience, for determination against difficult odds, and for a vision for a more equitable governance than the king was providing. Today, we gather not in the usual way. We are not side by side, close to our neighbors to keep warm and watch the pageantry of many reenactors who remind us of the role that they played a few centuries back. Rather, we are limited to a handful of socially distanced guests with no hot cocoa or coffee in hand to warm our hands, or energetic singing to keep our feet moving. We are, however, here today to appreciate our heritage, to remind all why this tower was built in 1904, and to ensure that people recognize the significant role that our community played in the founding of our nation back in 1775 to 76. We hope that you're going to enjoy the hybrid program, which is a mix of live footage videotaped in advance, plus sections recorded by individuals remotely or pulled from prior years of tapings. We invite you to visit here at some point, though we do ask you to be consistent with COVID safety rules, and come explore this newly renovated Prospect Hill Park, whose lovely landscape and furnishings further embellish the rich history of this very special place.
What would a revolution be without having an opposing view? I would now like to introduce the British forces. They served King George III, and today they are represented by Colonel Paul O'Shaughnessy. He is a member of Her Majesty's 10th Regiment of Foot.
Greetings. I speak with you today from the Armory in the depths of Castle William in Boston Harbor, where I and others have been isolated these many months in defense against the pestilence that walks the land. We hear that the surgeons may have an inoculation, and we are hopeful that this will allow us once again to walk the streets of Boston in defense of His Majesty. I bring word from His Majesty. His speech to the combined Houses of Parliament in October of the year instant 1775. To wit, my lords and gentlemen, those who have labored to inflame my people in America by gross misrepresentations and to infuse into their minds opinions repugnant to the true constitution of the colonies and their relationship to Great Britain, are now openly avowing their revolt, their hostility and rebellion. They have raised troops, they are collecting a naval force, and they have seized the public revenue. Many of these unhappy people may still retain their loyalty, yet the torrent of violence has been so strong as to compel their acquiescence till a sufficient force shall appear to support them. The authors and the promoters of this desperate conspiracy have meant only to amuse by vague expressions of attachment to the parent state and protestations of loyalty to me, all the while preparing for general revolt. On our part, as monarch, I have acted with moderation and forbearance to prevent the effusion of blood of my subjects, and the calamities which are inseparable from a state of war. Still hoping that my people in America would discern the traitorous views of their leaders. To be a subject of Great Britain with all of its consequences is to be the freest member of any civil society in the known world. The rebellious war now levied has become more general and is manifestly carried on for the purpose of establishing an independent empire. I need not dwell upon the fatal effects of such a plan. The object is too important, the spirit of the British nation too high, the resources with which God hath blessed her too numerous, to give up so many colonies which she hath planted with great industry, nursed with great tenderness, and encouraged with many commercial advantages, and protected and defended at much blood and treasure. When the unhappy and deluded multitude shall become sensible of their error, I shall be ready to receive the misled with tenderness and mercy. To remove as soon as possible the calamities which they suffer, I shall give authority to grant general pardons and to receive the submission of any province or colony which shall be disposed to return to its allegiance as if such province or colony had never revolted. Words of reason. Listen to them.
Now I would like to introduce to you Lawrence Wilworth. He is a lifelong resident of Somerville, a citizen soldier, and a retired U.S. Army combat veteran. Today he's going to be representing Lawrence Walford, who was an original settler of Charlestown and who was once considered to be the namesake for our community when we were separating from Charlestown back in 1842. This never happened, as Somerville was ultimately chosen for reasons that remain unconfirmed, but perhaps due to its English origins or more harmonious sound, and certainly not due to its year-round weather. Today, Lawrence will explain why each January 1st we raise the Grand Union flag here on Prospect Hill, and how Somerville played such a significant role in the founding of our nation. Thank you, Lawrence.
Welcome. Let me first wish to everybody a happy new year and a more prosperous future. On behalf of all the men and women of the U.S. military, past and present, let me first extend both a holiday and fraternal greeting to everyone. As we assemble here to commemorate our history and heritage, note that the current wintry conditions and adverse weather are an important reminder of the extreme hardship and conditions that soldiers of the American Revolution endured for months on end. Let us also never forget the brave men and women of our military who continue to serve us and protect our freedoms under similar or worse conditions, in harm's way, and without the comforts of home and family. Over 245 years ago, in April 1775, King George III and the British Redcoats pushed the residents of Massachusetts too far. This resulted in an armed rebellion and fighting in Lexington and Concord, months of siege throughout Boston, involving over 15,000 armed civilians, and ultimately to the Battle of Bunker Hill in June of 1775 in nearby Charlestown town. The Second Continental Congress, recognizing the need for an army that represented all 13 colonies, and authorized the formation of an army on June 14, 1775, under the command of General George Washington. Despite extreme hardships and shortages, this ragtag group of armed but untrained civilians was transformed under General Washington's leadership into an organized and disciplined army. Fortifications at key points of the colonial lines were defended by two outstanding commanders, Brigadier General John Sullivan at nearby Winter Hill and General Nathaniel Greene of Rhode Island on hereby Prospect Hill. By December 1775, the siege of Boston had gone on for 8 long months. Any clear outcome against the British Redcoats was not in sight, and reconciliation with King George III was still unsuccessful. Winter had arrived. The soldiers had not been paid. Morale was low, and their enlistments ending December 31st, 1775, were up. They wanted to go home. How would it be possible at this time, in the midst of siege and battle, and in the face of over 8,000 British soldiers, to organize this new army? Through Benjamin Franklin's efforts, General Washington's request of Congress for a new continental flag to symbolize colonial unity and coincide with the establishment of the Continental Army, the Great Union flag was authorized by Congress and sent to Washington in December 1775. On Monday, January 1st, 1776, the date the establishment of the new Continental Army and the new enlistments, General William Howe, commanding British forces in Boston, instructed copies of the King's Speech of Parliament declaring the colonies that were in revolt to be distributed directly through the American so-called rebel lines. In response, General George Washington directed that new flag be immediately flown from the most visible point, the fortification at Prospect Hill. This new flag was clearly visible to all, especially the British garrison in Boston. The pessimism of a month before had changed into a firm resolve. The colonists, once angry British citizens, have become transformed to independent Americans. The colonial army was reorganized from a militia army to a professional army, and most of the soldiers re-enlisted and stayed the course of 8 long years of the Continental War. Later in January 1776, under the leadership of Henry Knox, 58 cannon and 60 tons of supplies, previously captured at Fort Ticonderoga, were valiantly sledged under severe winter conditions over 150 miles to Boston. The emplacement of these guns on Dorchester Heights in early March 1776 forced a British premature evacuation of Boston on March 17, 1776, and a victory for the Continental Army. This victory, combined with the publication of Thomas Paine's Common Sense in January 1776, made citizens realize that independence was a possibility. A mere 6 months later, it became a reality on the 4th of July, 1776. Thank you.
Huzzah! Huzzah! Huzzah!
Hurrah!
Yankee Doodle went to town, riding on a pony. He stuck a feather in his cap and called it macaroni. Yankee Doodle, keep it up, Yankee Doodle dandy. Mind the music and the step, and with the girls be handy. Father and I went down to camp along with Captain Gooding, and there we saw the men and boys as thick as hasty pudding. Yankee Doodle, keep it up, Yankee Doodle dandy. Mind the music and the step, and with the girls be handy. Yankee Doodle, keep it up, Yankee Doodle dandy. Mind the music and the step, and with the girls be handy.
Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be, with God as our Father. We are family. Let us walk with each other in perfect harmony. Let peace begin with me. Let this be the moment now. With every step I take, let this be my solemn vow, to take each moment and live each moment in peace eternally. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me.
Greetings from the Continental Congress. As the Senior Land Forces Commander of Massachusetts, and in behalf of Benjamin Franklin's recommendation and direction of the Continental Congress, a New England Continental Army of 26 regiments has been created. We are highly pleased with the continuing improvements of the Army under the leadership demonstrated by General George Washington. I am fully confident of its success in the future. I traveled to this event today to show support for General Washington and his new Continental Army, and to present him with the first United Colonies flag, the Great Union. This flag forevermore will symbolize the unity and purpose of the 13 colonies in united support of the new Continental Army. In behalf of the Second Continental Congress, I hereby present this flag to you, General George Washington, as a new symbol of national identity to be displayed at the most visible point for all to see.
Commanders, bring your unit to attention and present arms for General George Washington.
Attention! Present arms!
By authority granted by the Second Continental Congress, Commander of the Continental Army, this day, Monday, January 1st, 1776, giving commencement to the new Army, which in every point of view is entirely continental. His Excellency hopes that the importance of the great cause we are engaged in will be deeply impressed upon every man's mind. Let us therefore, when everything dear and valuable to free men is at stake, when our unnatural parent is threatening us with destruction from every quarter, endeavor by all skill and discipline in our power to acquire that knowledge and that conduct which is necessary in war. It is discipline that is the life and soul of an army, which under Providence is to make us formidable to our enemies, honorable in ourselves, and respected in the world.
Commanders, bring your units to order arms and attention.
Mr. Henry Knox is making great progress with the noble train of artillery, the heavy siege guns from Fort Ticonderoga. I expect him to arrive with the 58 guns this very month. Future historians will marvel at his achievement and will compare it to Hannibal crossing the Alps. Rest assured, those guns will speak loudly very soon. I hereby direct that the new Union flag be raised, the most visible position in the American lines, Prospect Hill. That is all.
Bugler, sound the colors for the raising of the new flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
God bless America, land that I love. stand beside her and guide her through the night with a light from above. From the mountains to the prairie, to the ocean, white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home.
The COVID pandemic has foisted many challenges upon us over the past 9 months, but together we have tried to meet each obstacle with resilience, with determination, and with resourcefulness, similar to our forefathers seeking independence from the overbearing mother country. For helping us pull together this hybrid video, we would like to thank the Mayor's Office and the City's Communication Office, especially Steve DiCarlo, Joe Constantine, and Bill Trudell. We are also indebted to the invited participants, including Lawrence Wilworth, Lieutenant Colonel Paul O'Shaughnessy, Matthew Mees of Gardner's Regiment, the new Somerville High School Choral Director, Jeremy Pletter, and his Somerville High School students, and the City Council. And as with many of our historic events, we appreciate the steadfast commitment of our talented volunteers, Kathleen Pondelli for her creative local history outreach targeted to younger children, Linda Gritz and Mike Katz for dressing as colonial bystanders and demonstrating a period game, and Greg Bergeron for recently helping us prepare a brochure about the history of the Prospect Hill site and the tower. Please be aware that this brochure that I mentioned, as well as a program with more historical details and images, are posted on the website of the Historic Preservation Commission, which will come up on your screen now. Thank you again for being here today. Happy New Year, and happy 245th first flag raising.
God bless America! Hurrah!
Happy New Year!
Huzzah! Hurrah!
If I had a hammer, I'd hammer in the morning, I'd hammer in the evening, all over this land. I'd hammer out danger, I'd hammer out warning, I'd hammer out love between my brothers and my sisters, all over this land. If I had a bell, I'd ring it in the morning, I'd ring it in the evening, all over this land. I'd ring out danger, I'd ring out warning, I'd ring out love between my brothers and my sisters, all over this land. If I had a song, I'd sing it in the morning, I'd sing it in the evening, all over this land. I'd sing out danger, I'd sing out warning, I'd sing out love between my brothers and my sisters, all over this land. bell of freedom. It's a song about love between my brothers and my sisters all over this land.
Hi, my name is Michael. I came from Arlington.
So you're from Menotomy. Menotomy has a great historical past. A lot of Minutemen fought in Menotomy for our country. I'm glad you stopped by.
I saw this big tower here. And what's this place?
This place is Somerville, but it wasn't always called Somerville. We are standing on Prospect Hill. Somerville used to be a part of Charlestown. It was called Charlestown Beyond the Neck. From this hill there is a great view of Boston, Charlestown, and Cambridge. 245 years ago, the view was very different. There were no houses, big buildings, or bridges. Most of Somerville was pasture land for animals to graze. 245 years ago, people of the colonies were not happy. The colonies were under the rule of King George III. The siege of Boston had begun. Most of the fighting during the siege took place right near Prospect Hill. Just imagine watching 260 British soldiers row up the Mystic River and head to the old Powder House, or seeing 800 British soldiers row across the Charles River and march down Milk Row, or Somerville Ave as we know it, and head to Lexington on April 19, 1775.
Whoa, I didn't know Cabs Jump Park could march from here all the way to Lexington.
By December 1775, the siege of Boston had gone on for 8 long months. The end of the war was not in sight. The soldiers were cold and tired. They had not been paid. They wanted to go home. George Washington's headquarters was about 1 mile away in Cambridge. He knew he had to inspire his troops. He had commissioned a new flag, the Great Union flag.
What's that strange flag?
The flag you see that's flying at the top of the tower looks different from the American flag. This was the first flag to represent all the colonies in 1776. At this time, the colonies were still under the rule of Great Britain. The flag is a combination of the British flag in the upper right-hand corner, and the 13 stripes represent the 13 American colonies. On January 1, 1776, Commander George Washington presented this new flag to his troops right here on Prospect Hill. It was raised on the highest and most visible spot around.
What, really? George Washington was really here?
Yes, George Washington was here on Prospect Hill. His idea of a new flag, the first American flag, was a great one. The Continental Army had been created. The soldiers re-enlisted and decided to stay the course. They went on to drive the British out of Boston, the first American victory at the Revolutionary War. The Great Union waved proudly at the top of Prospect Hill. In 1903, the Prospect Hill Monument Tower was built. On January 1st, every year, the city of Somerville celebrates First Flag. We proudly raise the Grand Union flag to remember and honor the patriots who encamped here and fought for our freedom.
Wow, this place is cool. I'm happy I came to visit.
I'm happy you came to visit too. Come visit us at Prospect Hill on Monroe Street in Somerville.